Good afternoon, everybody. Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and podweather.com with an update on the tropics. And of course, we had Hurricane Earl make that landfall in Nova Scotia this morning as a tropical storm. It had actually weakened below hurricane strength, and we'll talk about Earl in just a minute. But elsewhere in the tropics, things look quiet right now, but they're not going to be for long, and that's because of a couple of features. First of all, note this area disturbed weather associated with our former depression here over Mexico. This has a moderate chance of development because it's going to be taking a turn north-northwest, closer to the Texas-Mexico border. At least that's what some of the models like the GFS show. And there is a former circulation of our depression in here, and if that were to get over water, then it would have a better shot of development. Even still, we're going to have to watch that moisture in the western Gulf of Mexico. You can see elsewhere in the tropics it's quiet. We have a pretty good wave moving towards Central America here, but not going to do much, it doesn't look like. We do have those little outflow boundaries from it. This little cloud here shooting away, that is unfavorable for development. We do have an upper level low forming right in this region here, and this is going to be retrograding on west. And just off screen we have the remnants of what was at one point Tropical Storm Gaston, and it's becoming quite high a possibility that Gaston regenerates and takes a track into view here somewhere in the Caribbean or just north of there, gradually west for a few days, and areas of those islands and even beyond that in Florida, the Gulf Coast, and the southeast coast need to watch Gaston's remnants very, very carefully. But let's go to the latest on Tropical Storm Earl for the last time, it looks like. As of 2 p.m., Earl was at 45.8 north, 63.2 west, winds were 70, gusting to 85, moving northeast now at 40 miles per hour. So very, very quickly getting out of the way now. 965 millibars of very, very low pressure considering the weak winds, and you can see it's continuing to move. We still have those hurricane watches up and the gusty winds occurring with that system there. And taking a look at the latest visible satellite, you can see that fast motion of Earl right on through Nova Scotia, and it's taken a track like that, is keeping a good consistent western side. Surprisingly, you could see there as it made landfall, even though it was not a hurricane, it had a well-defined center and a pretty good western side and eastern side, so it was a well-defined system making landfall in Nova Scotia. But there goes Earl, and as you can see as I put on the hurricane tracks of the tropical cyclone the last few hours, you can definitely see this system is right on track, moving on off towards the north and east, and we're not going to have to deal with Earl anymore at all. You can see Earl was a classic long track, strong Cape Verde hurricane, and it developed almost 10 days ago near the Cape Verde Islands, moved straight west. It was weak, ill-defined, but came back towards the islands into a Category 4 hurricane, moved just north of the Turks and Caicos, weakened to a 3, and then actually strengthened to its peak of a Category 4 of 145 as it was plowing right towards the Carolinas, but the ridge backed off as that front moved through, and Earl turned, missing the Carolinas and New England. But nevertheless, clearly you could see the ridge of high pressure was the dominant feature in Earl's life, keeping it from moving out soon enough and ending up hitting the Canadian Maritimes there. So not a good situation. And in the U.S. either, you could see rainfall amounts over Cape Cod, Nantucket, Boston, Providence, even areas of Long Island here were very high as Earl moved on through. Now this is the remnants of Gaston, and they're still having the model guidance run on it. You can see current motion is about west-northwest, which would generally take it towards southeast Florida. Most of the models indicate a west to west-northwest course. Some models, the ensembles, taking it into the Gulf, others into the Bay of Campeche, others to western Cuba or down here south of Jamaica, and some to southeast Florida. And in the middle of all that, the islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, Miami, Cancun, everybody needs to keep an eye on this because it could come back. It could come back into a hurricane down the line. It would not be completely out of the realm of possibility to actually see that happen. You can see the last few days Gaston has made a bit of a comeback here, and we're going to watch that. Now we also have another invest area, which you can see is Invest 99L, and it's forecast to move up and out. However, the southern portion of the system could end up moving further west than the northern portion, and you can see that even better here on the satellite. This here is our invest up here and it's moving northwest, but here's a big chunk of that wave continuing west briskly and further south. And if you look at the wind shear values on the chart, you can see that right now we do have low wind shear out there in the central Atlantic for Gaston. It does increase near this upper low, but that will be moving away, and Gaston should have a favorable environment. Also pretty favorable, I should add, in the western Gulf here with our system. And taking a look at that this hour, you can definitely see there is turning there. So we're going to watch this carefully to see if it moves parallel to the coast and stays over water. Now the GFS model continues to show Gaston impacting land and then two storms behind it, and that would be Hermine as well as Igor, and it also shows the system spinning up here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to watch this very carefully to see if that transpires. Of course, it takes Gaston over the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, South Florida, and then the Gulf Coast as a hurricane, a potent hurricane, and that would be over the next few days, say by the 15th, 16th of the month. So we're going to be watching this very, very carefully. Finally, out there in the Pacific, we had two tropical depressions. One is our interesting system here in the Gulf that is interacting with what was left of the depression. The other is out here, barely discernible. Both have been downgraded, and the rest of the Pacific is quiet. So I'm Mike Naso from IPR365.com. That's the latest on the tropics and the latest on Earl. I'll see you next time.